Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers Women in Engineering webinar with the theme of Repositioning Women for a New Reality in the Energy Transition. My name is Mahola Makululu. I'm the chairperson of the Women's Chapter. We are hosting this webinar in commemoration of Women's Month. Just some few housekeeping rules to ensure that this webinar runs smoothly. Attendees are reminded to please ensure that your volume is turned up on your device. Ensure that you have a stable internet connection. This will ensure that the streaming and audio will run smoothly throughout. Attendees can ask questions via the questions panel located within the GoToWebinar control panel. By default, the control panel is located on the right-hand side of your screen. The chat function is reserved for webinar organizers and panelists to communicate with attendees. Attendees will not be able to chat with each other. However, you are encouraged to ask as many questions as you can. A recording of the presentation will be made available on our YouTube channel and also our TV channel. The recording will also be made available on our website under the events drop menu in the section past events and webinar. This page is updated regularly, so you should ensure that you check back as often as possible for new uploads and subscribe to our YouTube channel. A certificate of attendance will be issued a few days after this webinar. I would like to open this session by introducing our president of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, Ms. SAIEE Women. She is a well-respected electrical engineer with a BSc and an MBA, and having worked across various areas in the electricity supply industry. And most notably, she was an advisor in then Deputy President Ramaphosa's advisory panel on the ESCOM challenges in the war room. She was also previously been the president of AMEU in 2008 and 2010. Ms. President, the floor is yours to give us your opening address.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our first Women's Day webinar, especially done for you guys being a Women's Month. And it's done especially and hosted by the SAIEE Women in Engineering chapter, and it's on energy transition, specifically with empowering women. So we have such a dynamic panel as well that I would like to welcome to the SAIEE webinar. And a special congratulatory note to the program director, who is also the champion of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers Women in Energy chapter, Mahola, and to the team and the people behind the scenes that have made this webinar possible. Thank you once again. We are definitely in interesting times where the Honorable Minister Gwede Mantashe set up a ministerial forum just a few weeks back. And we were lucky in that South African Institute of Electrical Engineers was also part of this. And one of the strong messages in the forum was that the representation of women in the energy transition is so important. So I'm hoping that this chapter drives this agenda forward and that women entrepreneurs participate in the energy transition. I also like to just take this opportunity to wish all our participants a happy Women's Day and encourage you all to claim your space in the energy transition. So without further ado, let me hand back to our program director, and I really look forward to an interesting panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words, President. I would like to just invite the attendees, if you would like to tweet some of the insights from this session, you can use the hashtag Repositioning Women or hashtag SAIEE, and we'll be able to pick up on some of the thoughts and insights that you might want to share on social media. The South African energy landscape is going through a major disruption. This is driven by climate change consideration, renewable energy technologies that is maturing and becoming more competitive, compelled by large pending decommissioning of ESCOM plants that we'll know will be decommissioned in the next 10 to 15 years. Current jobs as we know them will disappear in future. New jobs and opportunities will emerge. Is this a new opportunity to create a new and equitable sector in green energy that will, for the first time, make true what women have been asking for, an equitable and just sector? Or is this a moment to expose the underlying rhetoric that the world has really been selling to women, but doesn't really believe in equality and has really not worked towards achieving a just and equitable world? To unpack this very critical conversation, I would like to introduce Ms. Cindy Mzamo to moderate a conversation between various experts in the field of energy and electricity. Cindy Mzamo has qualifications in accounting and human resources and corporate governance and strategic leadership from GIBS. She is presently studying towards her MBA at Regenesis Business School. She's a former executive of the First National Bank, the Land Bank, the Department of Agriculture and Development in KZN, and Edison Power Group. She's an ambassador and advisory board member for the Africa Utility Week and a board member and director for Edison Power Group. She has held top executive position institutions, driving strategy and transformation with executive experience spanning a good 20 years. Cindy, we are in your hands and we look forward to a fruitful conversation and interaction between yourself and your panel. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you very much, President SAIEE. It is indeed a great honor for me to moderate such a powerful panel of women in engineering. In contrast to what people believe in engineering, engineering is an excellent occupation for women. Engineering is an independent and a creative, intelligent profession for women. And today we're going to actually display that because we have women engineers. The president is an engineer and the program director is an engineer. We've got Sis Nelly, we call her Sis Nelly. I'll explain it later why we call her Sis Nelly. And she'll understand it why we say Sis Nelly, because she's been a sister, I mean, for us as young women in the corporate environment, and we've learned a lot from her as well. And today we are actually going to discuss a powerful program that is talking about transition of women in the energy space. And I'm sure you had President talking about being appointed in the ministerial panel as the women in engineering. And I'm so excited about this, President, because it takes women and put them in the front line to actually deal with the issues of leadership, issues of appointment, issues of taking the rightful positions as leaders in the space of engineering. And now I would like to actually introduce my panel. The first panel is going to be Sis Nelly Magubane. Sis Nelly Magubane is an executive chairperson for Matleng Solutions. She holds a BSc degree in electrical engineering from Natal University and a PGD diploma in business administration from University of West London. Nelisiwe is a seasoned professional with over 25 years experience in the energy sector. Over this period, she held various positions in senior positions. In November 2000, she joined the Department of Minerals and Energy as the Chief Director, responsible for restructuring of the energy sector, planning and implementation of the electrification program. She was later appointed Deputy Director General, responsible for the development of policies that govern electricity, nuclear, and clean energy in South Africa. In addition, later, as the Director General of the Department of Minerals and Resources and Energy from 2009 and 2014. During her tenure as the Director General, she was instrumental in facilitating engagement in formation of South African Region Power Block. Nelisiwe was in June 2020 appointed as the new chairperson of the Strategic Fuel Fund, SFF, by the Central Fund Board. This is Nelisiwe Magubane that we're talking about, with vast experience in the sector. Then our next panelist will be Esther Nkwebana. She's a researcher at CSIR. Esther holds a BTech degree in chemical engineering from Tshwane University of Technology, a PhD diploma in business administration from Millpark Business School. Esther is currently studying towards a master's degree in chemical engineering through Wits University. Esther's main focus at the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research is on the SMME development in renewable energy. She works on various projects which support decisions making by the energy industry stakeholders, including the private sector and government. Esther has extensive working experience in enterprise development with a specific focus on energy and waste, acquired from Transnet, Matlato Center, an enterprise development initiative. Sasol Enterprise and Sasol Development Unit. Esther worked at the National Business Initiative under Private Sector Energy Efficiency Program, implementing the program in various industries. She has a background in production and research development, acquired from DOW Agro-Sciences and Sasol Research and Development, respectively. Then our next panelist will be our sister Rensia Fontonda, the head of power at Standard Bank. I have worked with Rensia from the African Utility Week. Again, we're really honored and humbled to have you coming from the banking sector to really talk about investment funding for projects that are actually in the power sector. Rensia holds a BSc honors and later completed a master's in business leadership and executive development program. Earlier in her career, Rensia worked for Absa Bank and Industrial Development Corporation. At IDC, she started in the Economic Research Department and later seconded as an advisor to the Office of the Minister of Minerals and Energy. She joined the IDC Mining Business Unit, and when she returned in 2000, she was promoted to be the head of the Wood and Paper Strategic Business Unit in 2003, and later headed the new Green Industries Unit. Rensia joined Standard Bank in 2014 with a focus on developing and implementing a new strategy for the bank to become the leading funder of renewable and power projects in Africa. And one thing I've noticed about Rensia, she's pro-women in all her projects. I mean, I've seen in a lot of women development projects that are actually facilitated by Standard Bank. Thank you very much, Rensia, for actually joining us today and being one of the panelists to give us a strategic direction in terms of funding bankable projects that are led by women. This is what we want to see now moving forward in the new era after COVID-19 or in COVID-19. We should start thinking about these strategies. How do we really make sure that the sector in energy is going to be led by women, but with really projects that are on the ground that are fundable? And I'm sure you'll give us strategic direction and also advise how do we package those projects. Now, we have our brother, Bernard Mahoro, the head of IPP office. This is one thing that is very powerful about the South African Women in Engineering, where we have a male counterpart who is a panelist when we're talking about women leadership. And I'm sure many organizations would learn from what the women in engineering today they've done, because we need our brothers to actually hold us and take us so that we'll be able to break that glass ceiling, because they are decision makers. And we want to actually make sure that we walk the talk with them. They assist us to be in leadership and take our rightful positions in these sectors. Bernard Mahoro holds the following qualifications: a BSc in Mathematics, Physics, and Statistics from the University of Venda, BSc in Electrical Engineering from the University of Cape Town, BCom from UNISA, and MBA from Wits Business School, and LLB from UNISA. Bernard is an electrical engineer by profession, over 20 years technical experience in managerial and leadership experience in electrification and supply industry. He has held technical positions in planning, operations, project management, grid codes, and benchmarking activities, as well as grid integration of different generation technologies, be it gas, coal, renewable energy, following the implementation of country's renewable energy independent power producer procurement program. Bernard led the process that saw the development and enforcement of first renewable grid code in South Africa. Bernard currently serves as the governing board member of the GO15, a group comprised of 19 largest grid operators in the world. These are our powerful panelists that we have today. And we are humbled to have you to lead us in this discussion in terms of our transition. The first person that I will actually go and speak to is actually Esther Mkhwebane, and give us the guiding thoughts for her, because she wrote a paper on the barriers and opportunities for SMME participation in the renewable energy industry. What was the driving force in the transition of the energy sector, and also to paint a picture of the future sector, and what will the sector look like in the next coming 20 years, and what are the roles and the functions that will disappear, Sis Esther, in terms of your research, and what are the opportunities and what are the interventions required to prepare and enable and the entry of women SMMEs in the sector. After Esther has finished talking about the research paper, I'll request our panelists as well to come through and engage on Sis Esther's research paper. Thank you, Esther. I'm handing over to you.
Great. Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Program Director, for the warm welcome. As you've mentioned, yes, we are going through a critical time as a country, and in fact, globally, as the changes are not unique to South Africa. What I would say with regards to the energy transition is that obviously there are key drivers that are leading us to find ourselves in this position. One of them being the current situation or the current status, whereby our country uses a lot of coal to generate electricity, and also the fuel for the cars, diesel and petrol and the likes. So with this production of these two commodities, we find ourselves with a lot of emissions that comes out of the production, which leads to climate change and the likes. So obviously, as the country, we have also committed ourselves to say we would like to see the emissions being reduced. And so we would put in efforts to make sure that we are reducing our emissions that goes through to the atmosphere. And also, this is linked to the infinite resources that are coming to an end. For example, the coal is the resource that we use. It gets depleted. We're not renewing it. Once we use it, it's gone. So that we are losing a lot of it, and obviously we have to come up with another plan on how do we produce the electricity moving forward. So with all this said, we are seeing what is happening in the industry, as we've seen supported by the IRP 2019 that was signed off by our minister last year, which indicates that as a country, yes, we are still producing our electricity from the coal. However, we are now incorporating some renewable energy resources to supplement our coal production. So with this happening, yes, we will see the industry slowing down with regards to the coal consumption and the electricity generation from that technology, and seeing an upside or a more incorporation of a more renewable energy production to supplement our needs to ensure that the country has sufficient electricity. And with that, we'll see some jobs being lost in the coal sector, and we'll also see some sectors creating opportunities in the renewable energy. And that is what I could tell for now with regards to the transition that we are going through. And with regards to the paper that we wrote and the findings thereon, we decided to do the investigation because we've noticed that yes, a lot of investment comes to the country, a lot of establishments are being implemented in various provinces with regards to the renewable energy. However, it has been shown that the SMME participation is minimal, and hence we try to investigate what are the causes, what are the barriers that are limiting the incorporation of the SMMEs into this field. And also the other aim was to identify opportunities that these SMMEs can tap into. So the findings that we got from there, because our our research was more focused on engaging the industry, the industry role players that are in the formal framework or formal structure of the incorporation of renewable energy, which is called the REP, where we had interviews with them. We have engaged them to find out how do they see the industry and how has it been for the SMMEs? Are they participating in this field? And if not, what are the issues that they have identified? And a lot of them were very supportive of our research work, and they were quite open to share their findings and their dealings in the sector. And the findings were quite interesting, and it was very useful. And maybe just to highlight just a few of the barriers that they identified and that they shared with us, that I would hope the different role players can take note of and ensure that we address those, so that we enable the SMMEs to enter the sector. And when I refer to the SMMEs, obviously that counts the women as well. So, and then I'll also highlight a couple of opportunities that were identified by the industry role players. So with regards to the barriers that they identified that are stopping the SMMEs being incorporated into this sector, it was the lack of skill. So a lot of them indicated that the SMMEs do not have the technical skill that is required for the industry. And the second one was the lack of the necessary equipment that is required for the industry, that a lot of SMMEs do not have the resources to acquire the required equipment due to the high investment that is required for that. The third one was that the local content requirement is not enforced by our government, even though the industry is encouraged to use the local businesses, local SMMEs and other business owners as being to be subcontracted for the industry. That is not being enforced, and unfortunately, some of the industry players shy away from it. And the reason why they do that is that they do not have much confidence on the SMMEs because of the lack of know-how, the lack of expertise in the field. And then the other ones was the upfront compliance costs, which are quite high, according to what they've told us, that it's limiting the SMMEs from participating because they are limited on the resources. So in terms of the opportunities that I would like to highlight that came through from this research work that we did, the industry indicated that yes, some of the opportunities requires established businesses. However, there are low-hanging fruits that the SMMEs can tap into without being expected to have larger resources in order for them to perform in this sector. So some of them I'll unpack it through the value chain of the renewable energy. Some of them, they indicated that for professional services, the SMMEs can provide services such as project management. They can provide site inspection services. They can provide wind measurement services for the wind industry, etc. With regards to transportation, SMMEs can look into opportunities such as the transportation of the raw material, transportation of the equipment. Yes, some of the equipment is highly specialized and it needs a bigger specialized transportation system, and that is expensive. But there are other technologies that don't require that specialized equipment for transportation. And also they can transport the raw material to the site. That's another service that they can provide. With regards to construction, they can provide services with regards to the pipe work on site, the concrete work. They can do equipment installations. They can also provide services with regards to road constructions, because as they build in certain areas, they are required to build the roads where they are going to use it for transportation of their equipment and other stuff. With regards to maintenance, they indicated that they can provide services with regards to lift inspections, electrical maintenance, and also including as simple as cleaning of the equipment. When you look at the solar PV technology, the solar panels are required to be clean at all times so that they can be able to absorb as much energy from the sun as possible. So the cleanliness is of utmost importance. And some of the auxiliary services that they highlighted is waste management, bed and bed monitoring, IT services, etc. And with regards to manufacturing, yes, it's also a highly specialized field, but they indicated that maybe the SMMEs can look at breaking it down, providing services with regards to like production of tower internals, the assembling of some of the parts, for example, the solar PV. What we've found in South Africa is mostly they source the bits and pieces abroad of the solar panels and then assemble it in the country. So those are some of the opportunities that they have identified. Thank you.
Very much, Esther, for setting the tone in terms of energy transition and repositioning women for a new reality. And you have covered a lot of important issues in terms of funding, model, and also local content and the issues of compliance, the challenges that women SMMEs face in the marketplace, and how do we make sure that we discuss these issues today. I want to hand over to Ms. Nelisiwe Magubane to actually take us through, because she's just been appointed as well in a new strategic position, and that we are so excited about it as women, which is the Strategic Fuel Fund, and also in the energy sector, but also to actually take us through and what I have used in terms of actually in this new transition and the repositioning of women in the new reality. Because in terms of making sure that we have our systems in the place, we need to have women appointed in influential positions like her to lead women-led decisions, and also to open up for women programs that will be led by other women. Thank you very much, Nelly. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you so much, Sai and Makola, for arranging this type of engagement. I think it's one of those engagements that are way, way, way long overdue. Just to take the whole topic, I just made a quotation here from a South African NGO 90 by 2030. This is what they are saying about a just energy transition. They say a just energy transition aims to make the, oh goodness, when people are trying to call you, to make the process of shifting to a better energy system as fair and just as possible. The justice part focuses on looking after people in the current energy system, such as workers in the coal sector, who could be negatively affected, such as job losses, by this energy transition. So part of a just energy transition would be the organized shift from coal to renewable energy in a way that empowers and uplifts workers in the coal sector who may face job losses. And I'm sure as you've been listening to me, not even once were women mentioned. Now, women are the procurers of energy in the home. Women are also the users of energy in the home, yet we are relegated right there at the bottom of the ladder. Now, and the most important thing in my view is that whatever we say about just energy transition, it has got to have women up front, because women are the ones who are making sure then that we have adequate energy supply in the homes, let alone in the commercial environment. One of the issues also that is not being taken into consideration of is the issue of secure energy resources. Yes, we want to transition to low carbon, and we definitely can. But whatever we do, we must make sure that we have secure energy supply. And the reason why we should be having a secure energy supply is because we are one of the top 5 countries which has got the largest reserves for the materials that are required for the 4th industrial revolution. In fact, we are basically sitting right there at the top together with Australia, yet we have not made an effort to make sure that we get these minerals to be declared as strategic in order to make sure then that as a country, we are basically well positioned for the fourth industrial revolution. So that's going to be the most important issue. And then going back to what Esther has just raised around the issue of fuels. One of the things that I have realized about Strategic Fuel Fund, it was designed in 1953. In fact, most of us were not even a thought in the heads of our parents. And yet, what was happening is that they've been looking mainly at the oil supply. Now, we have reached a situation where now we need to use cleaner fuels for our vehicles. We need to make sure then that we create an enable environment to be able to import these fuels should there need be. Now, one of the issues that needs to be done is that this company has got to be properly positioned to make sure then that not only it looks at the oil supply, but it also looks at how can we make sure that we have adequate fuels, cleaner fuels, especially in the times of a catastrophe. So that's basically one of the things that we need to look at. Now, in terms of us women as participating in the energy sector going forward, as you all know, most of us, unless you've got a very rich uncle, most of us are actually sometimes are the first ones actually going to finish university at our homes. So therefore, we do not have piles and piles of money. So one of the things that I felt over and above what Esther has mentioned, we need to start looking at opportunities where there are lower barriers of entry. Lower barriers of entry include, amongst other things, what I do, which is creating low-cost energy sources for utilization, either for commercial or for domestic use. So those are the areas which are lower barriers of entry, where you can be able to utilize your engineering skills, or alternatively, assemble a very good team that can be able to do that. The second issue also is looking at power exchange. In my personal view, I believe that going into the future, and also, by the way, one of the things that have not been mentioned here is that I also sit on the board of ESCOM. As we speak right now, ESCOM has embarked on a massive plan where they are basically saying each and every power plant, it will have to have a PPA with either directly with customers or with the buyer of power, which will also include transmission. So if that is going to be the case, then therefore we are going to need an organization that is going to make sure then that the clearing of that, a kind of a stock exchange of electricity. Somebody has got to make sure that they create those kind of organizations, because those kind of organizations, some of them are going to be just for big for big suppliers of energy, but some of them might necessarily be looking at smaller suppliers of energy. But basically, those are the areas that we need to be able to look at. And then in terms of areas, as I was saying, it's Strategic Fuel Fund, which is responsible for storage facilities. There you start looking at areas of maintenance of those storage facilities, because at the end of the day, you are not in a position to be able to buy some of those storage facilities because they need quite large capital. So those are the areas that we can start looking at as women. And I think more and more as women, we need to have our voice heard, not only in August, Bagit. Let's have our voice heard the whole year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sis Nelly. This was a very powerful contribution to us as women, and you made it an important point that it's not Women's Month because it's August. It should be Women's Month every day, in particular women in leadership, women in the private sector, women in the corporate sector, so that we'll be able to actually deal with the challenges that we're facing. And the most powerful thing that you have mentioned, that women are the users of energy. I mean, you've taken me back to say that if you look at in rural areas, my own sister, my own mother, they travel, you know, a long distance to go and fetch wood for fire. And now we've got Sis Nelly in the executive position where she can come up with a product that speaks to, you know, assisting my sister and my mother in those rural areas so that they'll be able to live a good condition of life. And these are the things that we are talking about today, the transition of energy and the role and the influence of women in key decision making so that they can also come up with products that are pro-women to assist women in the marketplace to live a good condition of life. Now, coming back to what Nelly has raised, because it was so mouthful, because it talks about business development, it talks about empowering women in the marketplace. I want to go to Ms. Pantonda in terms of the funding models and the role that she has played as a woman in the private sector, in the banking sector, to lead women-led projects or in terms of funding women-owned projects within Standard Bank and the former with the former employers that she has worked for. And she must also give us a guidance of how we can actually look at, you know, projects that we can invest in or bankable projects. Thank you, Ms. Pantonda. I'm handing over to you.
Thanks, Cindy, and again, thank you to Macaulay for arranging this. This is such a great opportunity, and I'm extremely excited to be part of this. I think, you know, Cindy, you've raised such a few important numbers of issues that we can address, but for me, I mean, funding is always a concern, and I can continue to talk about funding and the issues around that, but I think what I would like to start off is just to give you a sense of the importance of the energy transition. And I think Nelly phrased it quite well. And through Esther's research, you can see this is actually such an exciting time for each and every one of us. From a bank's perspective, I can just confirm that we are extremely sensitive to any issues being raised related to the energy transition. So what we do more and more is to understand what are the sustainable drivers in terms of supporting an energy transition. How can we as a bank be more proactive? How can we support development? How can we support different stakeholders and specifically link that to transformation? We've seen a lot of activists coming to Standard Bank in terms of our AGM. You've seen a lot of lobbyists making comments around how do we as a bank take renewable energy and sustainability more seriously. And from that perspective, I think it sets a nice base in order for us to actually share with you what we're doing. So, you know, I did a bit of research before we entered into this debate or discussion, and I found that, you know, the bank are doing quite a lot for women, but I haven't seen a lot being done for women in energy. So most of the incubators are looking after women entrepreneurs in the various countries we operate. And specifically, you know, the focus is more related to agricultural support, farming, you know, new enterprises, linked to the ICT sector. But when I started to ask the question, why not energy, and can't we do something? Can't we create a new incubator in the countries where we are? You know, the question was actually raised that maybe we should think about it. And I want to actually invite all of you, maybe we as Standard Bank should think about it, because at the moment, you know, it is not at the top of the agenda. I've seen the numbers where the bank incubate women entrepreneurs and support them to the level of, I think, 50,000 women in Uganda, Malawi, Nigeria, and South Africa as part of the UN Women Program. But how can we actually unlock support for women in energy? I want to compliment Esther for the work that she's done, and I think it raised a very important point. You know, Many women companies come to us and then they want to buy into the renewable energy IPP program and specific projects. Now, I think one needs to understand the complexity around that. Most of the opportunities that you find in REAP at the moment are secondary opportunities. So it already comes with a price premium. It is quite chunky numbers, and you will need some self-contribution, which is normally a challenge. When I was at the IDC, we tried to find ways to support BE groups and women entrepreneurs to actually be part of those projects during the development phase, so that you don't need to pay these heavy premiums when you buy in the secondary market. But I do think there's such an appetite at the moment for entities to become part of REAP, with more and more pressure on funders to look at innovative structures. I think the challenge really lies within that funding complexity around existing projects where there is a dividend stream, but it is not always that easy to fund that through a structure where there's no self-contribution. I always say to developers or entities coming to us, you don't really want to buy into a project where you will only see dividends in year 15 or 17, because then it doesn't really make sense. If you want to support empowerment and through development of female entrepreneurs, one should be actually be allowed to find a way to support that during the early phases of the development process. So for me, in taking Esther's work one step further, where she identified the lack of funding, the difficult entry barriers, I would definitely contemplate a much more structured approach where we can have partnerships, especially in these type of projects where we see big developers coming in. They want to partner, but they don't necessarily always feel comfortable to do it in a partnership where there is skills transfer. I do think we need a more programmatic approach where there is much more emphasis on bringing entrepreneurs along, doing skills transfer and supporting everybody during those phases of project development. I think the second thing that excites me about the energy transition is the fact that it certainly allows stakeholders to come together to work, find the enablers to fast track the transition in a manner where it's structured to support job creation. I think the coal sector is still very prominent in our country and will probably be for quite some time. We can't ignore that. We're excited about the repurposing of the coal power stations of Eskom. I think they identified 4 or 5. We believe that there is a number of opportunities there. And again, I want to encourage all of you to see how you can partner with some of the developers that are considering responding under those RFIs. And maybe just to conclude, I think this for me is a big next. The transition and the emphasis, especially post-COVID, will be enormous. And we need to hold hands, find ways to unlock these opportunities. I'm not only talking about renewable energy at scale, but I'm also talking about the hydrogen economy that's starting to opening up. I'm talking about the full value chain that you could find where applicable, how to increase localization. I'm talking about the increase of EVs that may come into the country and the impact on electricity demand. And then something that's very close to my heart is decentralized energy. We've done quite a detailed study. We interviewed 100 stakeholders to understand what are the main pain points in order for companies to fast track decentralized energy. And I do think there's also a number of opportunities and how we as banks starting to look at that more prominently in order to find equitable solutions to plug the supply-demand deficit and to actually fast track these captive rollouts of self-generation. Maybe just as a last thought, I do believe that this is the big next for all of us. You know, we've been waiting for opportunities to capitalize on. Don't only focus on the big projects, but also on these value chain opportunities, and specifically in areas where, you know, access to capital may not be limited by the mere scale of it, but rather by you bringing value and value add to the consortium or the partnership, because that is absolutely critical. Thanks, Cindy. I'll pause there. Happy to take questions and debate later on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fantonda. That was very powerful. And also your way forward in terms of coming up with an incubation facility for women in energy, that's very powerful. And Esther has came up with a very strong research, and that research would be a foundation for that incubation for women in the energy sector. And I'd like to thank the Women in Engineering for championing such a powerful platform that is giving a way forward in terms of the new reality and also repositioning women in the energy sector. Now, I'm going to hand over to our big brother, the only gentleman in the platform, in the panel, Mr. Bernard Mahoro, because as we were actually talking and listening to Esther's research, and also looking at the issues of local content, compliance issues, compliance costs, Mr. Mahoro, and also looking at your office you are heading right now, the IPP office, and the role of women in those IPPs. I'll hand over to you, my brother, so that you can lead us and give us a way forward and also encourage us as women to actually make sure that we play a critical role in that sector. And also, what is the enabling environment for us to participate in that space as women in the energy sector? Thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, everyone, and a happy Women's Month to all the ladies who joined us tonight. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to come and share with the audience what is happening within the IPP office. I will just touch a little bit on some of the benefits that we have gained, particularly in relation to women empowerment. I'll also focus on the future. What do we see coming going forward? So thanks very much, Esther. I think that introduction about the barriers and opportunities, I think it sets a good ground for us to start this conversation. And the timing for this session, you know, it's so perfect because if you look at the IRP 2019, clearly the energy space in South Africa will not be the same again. The future is going to be very different, largely driven by environmental sustainability. We foresee a lot more unbundled industry, and I think Nelly spoke about this. That is definitely going to happen. We'll see a lot of generators embedded within the distribution industry. We'll see a lot of self-generation coming into the picture. There will be a lot more market participants. In fact, last week, it was very interesting. AEMO, the system operator in Australia, published a very interesting report where they are projecting that by 2040, in Australia, 96% of energy will be coming from renewables. So technology applications will be key. So that is one area where I believe women need to rise up and take advantage of technology advancement. Be it ICT, communication, energy storage, e-mobility, distributed energy resources. I think those are the areas which will provide a lot more opportunities. So what is key, especially for our young engineers, is not only to learn, but to also unlearn what you think you know, because change is something that's going to be very, very constant as we move forward. So back into South Africa. So if you look at the IRP, we are looking at about 31,000 megawatts coming into the grid in the next 10 years. There are opportunities. Out of that 31,000, 20,000 will be coming from renewables, 6,000 from PV solar, 14,000 from wind. And we as the IPP office obviously will be driving part of this new generation procurement on behalf of the department. And again, there are opportunities. So I challenge all that have joined us in this call to at least understand, and I think Renshia touched on it, please understand how the process works. There are a lot of opportunities that come with the IPP procurement program. A lot of opportunities. If you just look in the ED space, we have 7 elements that are targeted at empowering local industries, local industrialists, and local communities. These elements are around job creation. So each of the IPPs is required to sign a contract with us as the Department of Energy to create jobs in all areas, starting from top management up to the lowest skilled level. And in there, we even have a subcategory or sub-element purely dedicated to women. So 10%, for example, should be women, 10% of the jobs should be dedicated to women. And these are the scorecards that are available. IPPs are signing on these scorecards, and these are opportunities that are available to women. On local content, 40% of the content in all the projects should be coming from local. And this is not something that we're inventing. It's based on what the DTIC prescribed as a requirement. Ownership, up to 49% of ownership in this IPP space is preserved for local companies. And within that, there is about a minimum of 12% by blacks. Now we are going into a space where we're going to start increasing these targets. And there are opportunities for everyone to tap into. The fourth element is management control. The IPP office also contracts IPPs to perform in terms of meeting these targets. We also require them to spend money on skills development, and this is a new area that we just introduced now, where skills development will be one of the core elements that the IPPs will have to contract on with the department. Enterprise and supply development, another key area. We have been buying a lot of materials coming from overseas. The idea is to now try and build in the local industries to supply this new power plants that we'll be building. Then the last element is socio-economic development. So which is about spending money to develop communities where the IPPs are located. So all these 7 elements are opportunities that I see women taking part in and benefiting out of. So if I can just share some of the achievements that we made in the last 10 years. 12% of employees in the IPP space, the 67 projects that are now in commercial operations, the 12% of those employees are women. And this is not enough. And it's really a challenge for the young engineers that are on this call to take advantage of these scorecards. Where we've made huge gains is that 60% of top management are women. And we want to see more in future rounds. Then the other area where we have also made progress is on the spend with local companies, especially women-owned businesses. We have spent at least 3.7 billion in the last 10 years. It's not enough, but it's a good start. And it's really a challenge for the women out there to take advantage, and let's increase this number as we move forward. And then the other one on social economic development, we've spent 1.2 billion on social economic development. This is related to community advancement. And part of this money has been spent in giving bursaries to previously disadvantaged kids out there, including women. So there are opportunities. We've spent 365 million rand on enterprise development, and these are small SMEs, and there's about 600 women who have benefited out of the program. So we have made a lot of benefits in the last 10 years, but going forward, the idea is to increase these targets so that we can increase the benefits for the country. So the challenge really is to say, as we move forward, let's get more and more women participating in these programs. As we speak now, we're going to launch the 2,000 megawatts risk mitigation. This will be launched anytime between now and the next 2 weeks. And that will be composed, it's a technology agnostic program, which means any solution that can meet the requirements that are imposed by the system operator, that technology will be taken into account in that process. And thereafter, we will start rolling out the next bid windows on the different technologies. There's already about 7,000 megawatts thereabout of renewables that will be coming into the, that will be launching in the next 5 years or so. On top of that, there will be 3,000 megawatts of gas, another 500 megawatts of battery storage. So all these new technologies, it's opportunities that I see more and more women participating as we move forward. So where I am, Program Director, I only see opportunities which I'm challenging all women who have joined us here to go and familiarize themselves with how the IPP program works and participate. I think Rensha touched on it. There is a lot that can be done to benefit women in this space. And us as men, we are here to support. And I think the program director did indicate earlier on that we have a role to play as men to create that opportunity for women to participate. And that is what we aim to do within the IPP office. And I'm happy to report that at least 70% of the employees in the IPP office are women. And those are the people you can approach and ask for help if you need to understand how the program works. And what I hope to see, and I'm going to conclude with this, we're not talking just energy transition. Program Director, I'm hoping that 20 years down the line, whenever we start decommissioning some of these renewable projects, the just energy transition will be something that has happened over the next 20 years. So we shouldn't be talking just energy transition in 20 years' time. It will be a continuation of the energy landscape. I'll stop here, Program Director, and then if there are questions, we can get back to the questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our brother, for such a powerful submission, and also for having 70% of women within the IPP office. Esther started with the research, and she unpacked all the challenges that we have in the marketplace. And one of them was the entry level and the skills in the marketplace, and making sure that women must be given that opportunity and in terms of labor requirements. And also we spoke about the decentralization of energy. And Sis Nelly made a very powerful submission on the energy strategic resources, to say that we've got enough, but it's not utilized in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. And Ms. Fantonda came up with an incubation system to say what we have seen in the marketplace. We don't have an incubation system that deals with women, particularly women in the energy sector. Now, my brother, you have just closed it. A technology application that will complement what Sis Nelly raised and what Ms. Fantonda has raised, to say that we need an incubation system, so that when we talk about energy transition and the just, in 20 years' time, we're not saying just, but in 20 years' time, it's going to be a continuation of what we are starting today in this panel, moving it forward. And Sis Nelly said that we cannot be talking about women empowerment only in August. It should be women empowerment every day in the marketplace. And we are glad to have you as the head of Independent Power Producer Office to be leading this discussion. So you'll be our champion, because we need you out there in the marketplace to drive women empowerment, so women can be strategically positioned in the marketplace. But before we go to the questions, I just want the panelists just to say 1 or 2, 3 submissions on the way forward to say, what is the sector going to look like in the next 10, 15 years? Because you have given me a leading role now as the program director to close it, so that we are now saying just, but in the 20 years, we must talk about things that are tangible. So I'm going to start with Sis Nelly to say, what will this sector look like from 10 to 15 years to come with these discussions that we're unpacking today? Thank you, Sis Nelly.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for the question. And one of the issues that I am hoping for, that in the next 10, 20 years, we're not going to be talking about the first this, the first that, the first women to do whatever, the first woman. It must be something that is natural. And we need, therefore, to make sure then that as women leaders in this sector, we actually do what is needed to be done to empower the next generation of women. And it should not only just be confined to engineering, but it also some of the other professions that are quite important. I'm talking now the financial professionals. I'm talking about the legal profession. All these women in those particular sectors have got a tremendous role to play that needs to be taken into consideration. But having said that, in order for us to have women who are going to be influential in the energy sector, it does not start at university. It starts at school. It starts at primary level. It starts at that level where we need them to be able to say to women, make STEM, which is your science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, to be your choice of subjects going forward, because then we are well positioned to be able to participate and be a decision maker in future in this particular sector. Now, coming to the just energy transition, in my personal view, there is a lot of body of work that is going to be required. Let's take, for example, the 3 power plants that have been advertised by Eskom for repurposing. Those power plants have created towns around them. Now, what we need to be able to say to ourselves, other than simply just say we're going to put renewable energy, but what are secondary activities that need to be done in those particular areas to change the landscape? For example, if you look at the mining sector, there is a lot of water that actually gets generated, or rather that can be actually be utilized. In other words, water that can be reprocessed and then be sold and be utilized by those towns, but also even by a number of surrounding towns. So that's the area where we need to be able to look at, and that's where we're going to play a very important role as engineers going forward. But also the agro processing. In those particular areas where we can do agro processing, how can we make sure then that those kind of areas, basically they are the future bread basket for this country? So that's basically what I see going to the future. Now, coming to the renewable energy, I am of the view that the renewable energy is going to need to be supported, and we are going to need lots and lots of technology deployment that is going to make sure that it supports our renewable energy deployment, and hence, therefore, it encourages us to be able to make sure then that we have not just a just transition, but a clean energy future. And then, of course, finally, I'm of the view that one of the things that we need also to do is also education. At this point in time, one of the biggest obstacles to just energy transition is that feeling that if I am a coal miner, what happens next? What's going to happen to me? Now, we need to be able to engage those people, bring them with us into the clean energy future. So they need to be able to be educated. They need also to be given opportunities, or also reskilled to be able to continue to participate in the economy, but also at the same time see the future South Africa that is clean. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Sis Nelly. That was so powerful and so mouthful. Now, What I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Ms. Fantonda, just to make a follow-up on what Ms. Nelly has just said, to see what is the sector will look like in the next coming 10 to 15 years, but also unpacking the decentralizing of energy and also looking at the technological applications across the board on the just, transition, but also at the same time thinking about the applications that the bank is looking at and the way forward of the incubation system for women. Yeah.
Thanks, Cindy. I think, yeah, this is such an exciting debate. I certainly see within the next 10 to 15 years a total sector reform of the power sector. I certainly believe that we're going to see transformation happening through successful partnerships, and we're going to have a lot of case studies to talk about in terms of female entrepreneurs partnering with strategic sponsors and actually having business cases that we can share more broadly. I also believe, that we're going to move towards a virtual power station setup, where we will have decentralized solutions becoming more and more visible, with not only consumers of electricity, but the consumer becoming a prosumer, where I can start to generate power wherever I am, where I live, and put that back into the grid. I also believe that we're going to see more and more movement towards trading, more trading licenses being issued, more microgrids coming on stream. And I think that's going to require different skills. It's certainly going to open up opportunities for SMEs. I'm very excited about the work we've done on decentralized energy. And I, again, believe that if one could get that right, we will not always look at Eskom to solve our supply deficit issues, but actually join hands and find ways to support them and to be able to be much better in terms of a united approach to develop the sector. I'm also very hopeful about the future of the rollout of the IPP programs. And I think, Bernard touched on that in terms of what they are currently doing and where they focus are. I've always been a strong supporter of increased minimum levels for BE, including, more detailed guidance to projects in terms of what will be required from a gender-based point of view. But at the same time, I would also encourage the IPP office to please monitor these guys and these projects quite well, because I do believe it's a bit of a carrot and stick situation. Everybody wants a PPA, but at the same time, when they bid, everybody commits to certain obligations, and one need to make sure that you monitor that quite effectively. So I'm excited about the future. I do believe we're going to move into a virtual world where actually electricity will become cheaper and there's more opportunities. Thanks, Cindy.
Tonda. I'm going to actually come back to Ms. Esther, because she started with the research, and now we are actually coming back to her because our brother is going to close it. Now, looking at what Esther has raised, the barriers of entry, challenges in the marketplace, Esther, how do you see, in terms of the research that you have done, in the next coming 10 to 15 years, how will the energy sector look like in terms of transition, the new era? Now we're talking about the new normal, talking about COVID-19, because things are no longer normal. We're talking about a new normal that is adjusted us globally because of this pandemic. What interventions are required to prepare and enable the entry of women SMMEs in the sector? Because there are opportunities already. The IPP office is talking about them. Cisnelli is talking about those opportunities. Varentia is talking about those opportunities. But the critical thing is to prepare the women entrepreneurs so that when they get into the marketplace, they are really ready, so that we can have interventions and create an enabling environment to make sure that women are thriving in this new transition. And also what roles and functions will disappear to make sure that women take their rightful position in the marketplace. I'll leave it there, Sis Esther. Please, can you take us through?
Thank you, Sis Cindy. When we did the research work and we found what we found, as I've highlighted earlier on, it was a matter of, yes, this is the current situation, and do we leave it at that? Do we close the book? Do we file the paper and pretend nothing has happened? But however, we decided to take it a step further, which is one of the approaches that CSIR has implemented as a strategy, to say we don't only do research and leave it at that, but we would like to take it a step further and incorporate and work hand in hand with the industry to ensure that the findings are dealt with. We take it a step further and ensure that we implement what has been recommended. And I'm very excited to hear from Rensia earlier on, indicating the issue that actually, when you look at our country, there's so many support services for SMMEs that are generic for other sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, etc. However, there isn't much that are specifically looking at energy. And that's one of the ideas that we have conceptualized within CSIR, that we would like to work hand in hand with the various stakeholders, use the resources that we already have within CSIR in terms of the skills, in terms of the infrastructure that is available, and also work with the other stakeholders that might have extensive resources that can be tapped into to help prepare the SMMEs so that they are able to participate in this sector, because the research has shown us that there is a deficit, there is a lack in terms of the skill, there is a lack of knowledge, there is a lack of resources. So how can we best position ourselves to enable and empower the SMMEs? So really, it's about bringing different stakeholders that have various infrastructure, that have various investment that can be made into this, because we unpacked what would it look like if we were to support the industry, if we were to support the SMMEs. And what we got stuck with, it's mainly the funding, that where is the funding going to come from to ensure that we establish such a support program. And it's exciting to hear that organizations such as Standard Bank are actually looking at something of that sort, incubation services, because I believe in order for the women to be able to take their rightful place, they need to be equipped, they need to be prepared in order for them to perform and deliver as expected. And some of the issues that I would appreciate the industry to look into to ensure that we equip and prepare the SMMEs, the women in this particular instance, is to consider upskilling, consider mentorship, which is one of the areas that has proven to work and of value, because those that have advanced in certain areas can always share their expertise with those that are upcoming. So making sure that the SMMEs get someone who is able to mentor them and transfer the skill, and it will be appreciated by the industry if the key industry role players see it as their responsibility to do the skills transfer. Yes, we source a lot of technology from abroad. However, as we do so, can we not transfer the skill and ensure that the skill remain home, so that they are able to provide the necessary services when the respective companies are no longer in the field? And also, just to highlight, or maybe just to wrap it up by the words that I would like to borrow from the EUSITA CEO. And one time we attended a graduation ceremony where CSIR is providing the technical mentorship to the SMMEs that we were supporting by the industry. And then she mentioned that, you know, so long as there's still a woman in the village fetching wood to prepare dinner for her family or to keep the household warm, we are still far from concluding our jobs. So this should be something that each and every one of us aspire to contribute towards, to ensure that each and every household has the necessary clean energy for them to perform various roles in the households. And I believe that the opportunities are massive. I mean, it has been explained, a lot of them highlighted with regards to decentralized energy, and that's where women can play a role in. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
That was powerful and so mouthful. Definitely, we need to make it a point that there is no house that doesn't have clean energy. And I think that is our role moving forward with the panelists, with the task team that has been working towards this powerful webinar that is giving solutions to women. You're not only giving solutions to women that are sitting in the platform. This is an amazing platform because you're also giving a solution to that woman who's in a rural area fetching wood from the bushes and going and cook for the family. So now this is how we're going to move forward and making sure that our applications, our technology applications will think for that woman in a rural area. And thank you very much, my dear sister, for such a powerful research. Now I'm going to move over to our big brother who's going to close and give a way forward for us before I hand over to the program director for the Q&A session. Mr. Bennett Mahoro, thank you very much, my brother, for the powerful submission that you have made as the head of IPP. It's not by mistake that you are in this platform today and you are the only man. There's a reason why you are in this platform today. The reason is that as from today, you are the champion of women empowerment and leadership in the sector. We're going to actually be running after you, Bernard, to say, we have discussed, we have made resolutions in this webinar. We want you to go out there and make sure that you become our champion. Because as the women in engineering, we work very closely with men to assist us to break through the glass ceiling, to make sure that women are actually owning empires. But we need men to assist that in the marketplace. We cannot do it without men. This is a reality because men take decisions. And as women, we cannot fight with men. But what we need to do is we need to work very closely. And hence you are here today. And we want to show them in the marketplace that men and women, they can work together and break that glass ceiling, being assisted by you, my brother, Bernard. Thank you very much. Take us through 10 to 15 years. How do you envisage the sector with you being a champion and actually getting other men to rally behind women? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, so I'll start with my view about the sector. I think obviously the IRP is our guiding document. Clearly, if you just listen to the conversation out there, there are certain things, and I think Renshia touched on a number of them. The grid will be decentralized. There will definitely be a lot of smaller players, starting from the rooftop to smaller IPPs, some of them supplying directly to the customers. We have seen some of the mining houses as well saying they want to start playing or buying their own power from IPPs. The same is coming from some of the metros as well. So I think the way the sector will be, it will be very much a decentralized field where you've got a number of smaller players, all of them competing, which is good for the consumer because that drives the price. And there will be a lot of prosumers that will be generating for themselves in the household, but also participating in the market. And the role of the grid operator will be very interesting and very exciting. So engineers who are excited in that space, in fact, I foresee a number of grid operators coming up. Some of the distribution control centers might even be turned into grid operators, balancing the system at local level. So it will be very, very different grid from what we see now. And all of this come with a lot of opportunities for engineers. And I foresee women playing a critical role in this process. And I challenge our young engineers to do the same, take advantage of these opportunities. We have a lot of policies in South Africa, very good policies. And my hope is that given the IRP 2019 and some of the determinations that are ongoing, that the Minister Mantashe has signed off, we will have clarity in terms of predictability of what are we buying when. If you look in the last 10 years, we made some benefits. Unfortunately, because there was no predictability in the program, we had startups coming up and shutting down because there was no further rounds happening, because a lot of these industries depend on predictability as to when is the next rounds going to happen. So I'm hoping that we as the Department of Mineral and Energy soon will have a 10-year plan in terms of how we're going to roll out the IRP and the subsequent bid windows that will be coming out of that, so that 10 years down the line, we don't talk local content. We have already developed industries that are possibly exporting, not possibly, that will be exporting some of these materials to other countries. So that really is my plan as part of the IPP office. And on the monitoring side, I take note of what Renshia mentioned. There is a lot that we could do in terms of improving compliance to these scorecards that we signed up with IPPs. And that is definitely one of my focus areas, to make sure that they deliver on what they've committed. We can get a lot more if we continue to monitor and make sure everyone delivers on their commitments. But the key to all of this, I think, is education. We need the right education in the country to support our energy system. We cannot continue to import the skills to drive this industry. But then again, it all depends on each and every one of us. And I'm really talking to all of us, women and men. I'll give a simple example in closing. There is a young lady that I'm recently mentoring. She's a 27-year-old, qualified as a mining engineer. She decided mining is not her space. She asked her parents to travel. She went to US. While she was in US, she stumbled into solar development. She studied. She came back, she opened her own company, and now she's putting PV panels on top of the houses. And I can already see this young lady in a few years' time participating in the IPP program. So if she can do it, I'm sure all the other women who are listening here, they can do it. This is someone who is a mining engineer who is now participating in the solar PV space. So this is a challenge that I'm putting to all the young women listening here, to also think about. Remember, I started by saying there's a lot that we have learned that put us to where we are today. But I believe that some of this we have to unlearn so that we can learn new skills as we move forward. So, Chairperson, I'm going to stop here, and then we'll take if there are any questions coming from the listeners. And I really hope this debate will continue. It's not just a once-off, because for this to succeed, we have to keep talking and reminding ourselves about the opportunities that are out there for all of us. Thank you, Cindy. Back to you.
Thank you very much, my brother. And before I hand over to the program director, I'd like to thank the Women in Engineering for actually coming up with this powerful webinar, and thank the president as well, Ms. SAIEE Gora, who is also a woman, a powerful woman in the sector as well. Thank you very much for such a powerful webinar. But also what we have learned today in these discussions and leading, way forward is an incubation system for women in the energy sector, a technological application that we can look at that will also look at women, and also a monitoring and evaluation system and scorecards in terms of IPPs. But also, my brother mentioned a very powerful submission to say that we need to also focus a lot into education so that our system, our sector, the IPP sector or the renewable energy sector actually speaks to what the curriculum is in universities, so that we can start rethinking and refocusing in the next coming 15 to 20 years. We train the right engineers that will be able to take us further in the next coming 20 years. And I'd like to actually finish by just a note in the engineering sector that says that engineering is exciting and women are very creative, and also they provides an opportunity for women to thrive in that particular space because of their creativity. With those words, I would like to say thank you very much to the participants, and thank you very much to the panelists. And we're glad to actually have you and participating in this webinar, and looking forward to the contributions for the near future, and making sure that we'll be able to actually move forward and drive the sector and be the best of the best, and make sure that people are powerful in the sector. I'd like to hand over to the program director. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you so much to the panel for really tackling this otherwise very, very dynamic topic. We've got quite a number of questions. I currently don't see any hands from the attendees, so I will work through the questions as in the order that they've been asked. The first question is from Nyasha Horonga, and she says the suggested opportunities such as bird monitoring is normally left for local employment. I think the barriers to compete with big business on skills jobs should be looked at in order to accommodate SMEs, and not as to create competition for local people. And so maybe, Esther, just to reflect on this question comment, is there an opportunity to legislate in some areas, opportunities, some of the opportunities that you had highlighted earlier on, that would ensure that the local environment does benefit people in those areas?
I would say at this stage, we are guided by the policy, and I'm just glad to hear Mr. Bernard saying that he'll be looking at this very finely with regards to the local content implementation and actually monitoring, which is one of the issues, one of the challenges and barriers that has been highlighted by the industry role players that have seen happening within the industry, that yes, there are such requirements that are expected to comply with. However, due to lack of monitoring and evaluation or enforcement to some extent, some of them are able to get away with it and not necessarily provide some of the opportunities to the SMMEs or the local businesses. So I think policy will be our best bet in this case, whereby we will rely on it, whereby we will hopefully get support in that regard, where they will enforce such notion to ensure that such opportunities are given to the local people. Thanks.
Thank you, Esther. Attendees are encouraged to raise their hands if they would like to ask a question vocally or to type in the text box. The second question is from Poppy Milatu. She says, South Africa has a massive coal resource. What is the panel's view on clean coal technologies for power use? Have we worked closely with local and international academia and research institutions to enable clean technology? and what are the scientific research findings on clean coal technology? Between Sis Nelly and Esther, I'm not sure who would like to take this question.
Yes, yes, definitely. I would like to do that. Personally, I always believe that all energy resources were created equal. So all energy resources need to provide their plans of making sure that we transition to low carbon. Now, if we're looking at clean coal technologies, we need also to think about what it means for water resources, what it also means for the actual clean coal technology. Are we going to be importing this technology, and what are going to be the impact on importing these kind of technologies? So effectively, until such time we have all the information at our disposal, it's going to be quite difficult. But I'm of the view that clean coal technologies must also be given a chance until they prove themselves otherwise.
Thank you for that, Sis Nelly. Cindy, if I can maybe bring you into this next question from Pinile Matlangu. She says, I would like to know over the years how some of the panelists have managed to overcome bias and unfair treatment in the engineering sector. There are instances where female engineers find that they're being punished for wanting to take time off for family responsibilities, such as maternity leave. How would you advise young females in these instances? Cindy?
I suppose being the oldest person probably in the panel, maybe I need to respond to that because
Go ahead,
yes, because I was one of the first Black female engineers, and of course those are the issues that had to be dealt with. Fortunately for us right now is that a lot of women have fought in the public and private space for the rights of not just only women. In fact, there are actually case precedent in one of the public sector organizations where a gay couple actually had one man had to be a primary caregiver, and hence therefore he had to take maternity leave. So effectively things have moved on quite significantly since then. So I am not aware of any latest situations where you get punished for taking family responsibility leave at this point in time, because we've got a very liberal constitution, we have got a very, very strong judiciary system where all these issues can actually be ventilated. But I am not aware of any of those. And on my side, I must confess, I never actually experienced that kind of a situation. So I'm of the view that all we need to do is to make sure that we're assertive in what we want, and also make sure then that we point out some of the issues that are not necessarily in line with what is there in the Constitution and the prevailing legislation.
Thank you for that. The next question would be for you, Bernard. It's from Poppy Milatu again. It says, I'm happy that South Africa has connected significant amount of renewables to not only improve constrained power grid, but also ensure reliable power supply. However, the power is intermittent and available only at certain times. One of the panelists also highlighted the lack of storage. What can be done to ensure that we have an informed strategy when transitioning, when we have a constrained power grid, which still requires conventional power as the main source? What are your views on this?
Yeah, I can make some comments around that. Yes, that is correct. And I think we must always remember when we started the program, the reasons for the country to move into renewables were not for peak management. The reason was to deal with environmental issues. The issue around capacity and dispatchability were not considered at the time. But going forward, and this is how the IRP was put together, it takes into account all those factors: flexibility, dispatchability, issues of system stability. So those are the focus areas as we develop our generation going into the future. And that is why I emphasize the issue of technology. So we now have the benefit of, for example, the battery technology, which will help us to deal with some of the challenges that was raised by Ms. Molato. So yes, it's a concern, but going forward, I think those solutions, if you look at how technology is developing, especially around the battery, definitely it's not going to be an issue going forward. And how we have structured the 2,000 megawatts risk mitigation program, it's actually specified in terms of what the system requires. So we are actually moving away from just buying energy that can be produced at any time. We've actually specified that we need these 2,000 megawatts within certain time frame from 5 a.m. until 9:30 p.m. So which means if you're bringing any solution, you have to make sure that that plant is dispatchable throughout those hours. So yes, I acknowledge that there has been a challenge in the past, but going forward, all of that has been taken into account into the future programs. Firstly, with the IRP optimization, but secondly, with the procurement strategy going forward.
Thank you for that, Bernard. I've got a hand from Donald Nkadimeng. Donald, please go ahead. Donald, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, I'll come back to Donald later. The next question is from Ayanda Noah. Happy Women's Month to the panel. Thanks for the informative session. Rensha, since you concede that not much is done for women in energy from a funding point of view, I'm wondering how quickly this incubation you are recommending can be facilitated and brought to life so that women do not lose out on the opportunities that we can see in the horizon. What are the small important actions that can be taken now to ensure that we do not miss this opportunity?
Thanks, Mkholi. I've realized, you know, when I mentioned it, that is exactly the next question that I would expect. So for me, the next step for me is to take this back into the bank, say that we did mention it at this forum and it was, you know, seen as a potential good idea. We do have an enterprise development section within our business banking division. So I sit within corporate and investment banking, but I am closely linked to the business banking side. So I will certainly engage with them. And I fully appreciate the comments around lack urgency. So allow me to do that, and I will definitely feed back to this forum. And I think, Mkholi, maybe between the two of us, you know, I can come back to you and give you maybe some feedback. And I do think it's important that we have an action plan around this.
Okay, thanks for that, Rensha. And the next follow-up question is for you as well, is that you mentioned opportunities to partner with developers. In your views, what are some of the ways that entrepreneurs make connection with these developers?
So I think you know what we do find is in many cases some of these strategic investors reach out to us and ask us, so who would you recommend in terms of us partnering up with? And I think, you know, I'm always cautious to put any names forward or any entities. So what we normally say to them is, you have to follow your own process. You have to actually make the effort to engage at the grassroots levels, where you're going to construct your project, where you intend to, you know, engage with local authorities, local entities, and at that point you need to find a way or find an understanding whether you're comfortable with the parties you engage in. So I think it's a valid point. Maybe one need a broader forum, maybe one need a platform for entities to have the opportunity to engage. I do think, and Bernard can maybe comment, I do think the IPP office also tends to get these type of requests. And I don't want to sound negative about it, but the problem with most of the entities is that they normally want entities to partner with local parties that can fund themselves. And that's why they reach out to the banks, which I think is actually the wrong thing. They should ask the question, how can they find the right partners that they can help develop and actually take to the next level by addressing skills transfer and all of those nice things. I mean, it's a pity that we have a few entities that is so prominent currently in the program, whilst there's so many other smaller entities that haven't had the opportunity. So maybe we must think a bit bigger about some sort of platform and way to find entities to introduce each other to them.
Okay, thanks for that, Renchia. And I think the next two questions are linked to exactly that. From Manzi Tlakudi and Mbai Litebele, they are both asking, may you kindly unpack the opportunities or steps to grab the opportunities? And the second question is, what are the exact programs that one can join to start getting involved? So it looks like the opportunities are generally not visible to people who are currently not in those sectors, and people don't really know where to grab those opportunities. So maybe, Bernard, we must challenge you to assist us, in finding a platform where we can unpack the value chain, unpack areas where people could actually engage. Would that be something that you'd be keen to engage on?
Yes, Mahola, yes, I do support that. Obviously, running a procurement program, you also have to make sure you do not dilute that process. It's a very interesting question, because on the other hand, whenever you engage with potential developers, they complain about not finding partners, and you can hear now people on the ground are saying, here we are. So somewhere, somehow, we seem to be missing each other. So I take that challenge. Let's see how we can facilitate such a collaboration between the potential developers and those who want to participate in the program. But definitely there are a lot of opportunities for people to get involved. As I said, it's not only in terms of ownership, but it's also in terms of supplying, supplier development, skills development, and most of which will probably eventually lead to one participating meaningfully in the bidding process as well. So perhaps people must think of starting small, like the example that I gave. If someone has a track record, it's much easier to connect and be part of a bigger program into the future.
Okay, that's fine. So I think we do commit to demystifying, the IPP and making it more visible and accessible to more people. So we will talk about the next steps in doing that. The next question from Nosipo Bodlingwe says, renewable energy is new and is expected that there will not be no skills or experience at this point. What measures can be put in place for training and development in order to upskill women? I appreciate the opportunities shared. However, I think we need to look into ensuring that women are adequately positioned and trained to have the necessary technical skills. Bernard, I think is the point you were making about importation of skills. Do you have any further comment on this?
Yeah, just again to emphasize, we need to learn and to unlearn, because most of us grew up in a different industry, and now we're getting into a different space where technology is key. And I think if you look at the number of entrepreneurs that are in this space, most of them did not train in this renewable space, as part of their educational background. So they learn this one way or the other, either through doing, or like the example I gave, where somebody just decides, I would like to try something different. I want to work for myself. So I think this is where, it really goes back to your passion, the interest, and if you really are interested, there are a number of courses, even within South Africa, where you can start learning about, renewables and how do you participate in this program. I'm happy to say, even when I was still serving within as Commander System Operator, we actually developed a number of engineers in this very space, starting from nothing. So unfortunately, you hardly find curriculums in universities dealing with this aspect. So you have to go for designed courses specifically on specific subject, whether it's PV installation or wind installation. But it is possible to learn these skills.
Okay, thank you, Bernard. Some of the questions are very similar to questions that have already been asked, so I will not repeat those. There is a question from Lerato Mputle. Given that most renewables plants require less operating time and maintenance, how can the employment created during development phase be sustained post the installation phase?
Yeah, I guess I can come in here as well. So what we do, we actually contract IPPs for both. So there is a scorecard for construction, and then there's a scorecard for operating. So there's definitely less opportunities or less jobs post construction. That's a fact. But that's why I also talked about predictability in terms of future round, because the idea here is we're not just building skills for one round. We want to build sustainable skills and get to a point where we actually build sustainable industries that are able to even export some of this products. So that is the aim. Yes, construction jobs is a lot, and we do scale down during operations. But the idea is not to just build for one procurement round, but to make sure that this is sustainable going forward. As I mentioned earlier, there's 20,000 megawatts that we'll be procuring in the next 10 years of renewable alone.
Okay, thanks for that. Donald Nkadimeng, are you back online? Are you able to ask your question?
Yes, I'm back. My apology. I was technologically a challenge for some time. Firstly, happy Women's Day to all the women in the house, and thanks for this opportunity. My one, it's two questions. With regard to the contracts which the IPP are concluding with in the REIP, I just want to check, because there are commitments that are being made with regard to industrialization, localization, ESDP, and skills transfer. Are those people sticking, or those contractors sticking to those? How do you monitor that? Do you see any deviation from what was signed off? Because this is one of the issues that we're grappling with regard to businesses or whoever suppliers making commitments, but in reality we see a small difference when this thing comes into fruition. The second one is with regard to transition, is a follow-up to the question which was asked just now, wherein you mentioned that number of jobs you see number of jobs at the construction, which the numbers tapers off during operation. During this transition, how are we going to manage that? Because in the IRP, as you can see, moving to renewable and decommissioning some of the power stations, a number of job losses is imminent there, and the REIP or the renewable energy does not seem to have capacity to absorb those number of jobs that will be lost. What is a plan? How can that be sustained going forward to make sure that we don't have that bad situation given the economic challenge that we have in this country. Thank you.
Okay, Bernard, would you like to take the first question? And I can ask Ms. Nelly to please take the second question. Go ahead, Bernard.
Yes, I will. Yeah, in terms of monitoring, Donald, we actually monitor the IPP performance on a quarterly basis. So every quarter they do report on each and every element of the scorecard. I cannot say that it's perfect. There are challenges, but we are doing our best to make sure that there is compliance to those contracted targets. That's on the first one. The second one, I think I'll leave that to Sister Nelly, but suffice to say that, yeah, so energy transition, obviously it's a challenge. You cannot replace skills like for like. It's different technologies. And I think this is where the issue of retraining and repurposing comes in, so that at least you can preserve some of the jobs. So I'll leave that to Sis Nelly to elaborate.
No, absolutely, Ben, you actually have hit the nail on the head. One thing that you can be rest assured of is that when you close a power plant and put a solar farm, whether it has got the same amount of that power plant, a coal-fired power plant, or whatever the case might be, the bottom line is we are not going to get the same number of jobs that were in the coal space as the same number of jobs that we're going to get in a solar farm. So that is where then just energy transition becomes key, where everybody must come into the table. That means your unions representing workers, the business representing various energy business, also government. Because if you recall, most of the coal-fired power plants, they are sitting on mine mouth, and most of the mines actually have rehabilitation funds. Those funds are not simply just there for rehabilitate a piece of land, but also how can they be utilized to retrain people. Let me just give you a practical example with one of the mining companies that I sit on the board of. They've got what is called a legacy project that they've started it now, where they are basically going to some of those labor sending areas to be able to provide new skills, new projects, new agro-processing businesses that a number of those workers that were employed in the mine can actually start doing some work and earn a living, a decent living as they did before. So basically, it's not going to be like for like, but it's going to be a question of what kind of skills that we need to provide people and ensure that they are able to continue to survive going into the future.
Thank you for that. We've got a hand from Raisa and then a hand from Tobeka, and those will be our last two questions. Raisa Poche, please go ahead. I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. Raisa?
Hello, good evening.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'd like to thank all the panelists for the very informative talk this evening, and I think it just excites me even more for what's to come in the sector for women. And I think my question is focused at Bernard. I'd like to thank you for the insight you've given us onto the IPP program. And as a woman in energy, I've got a very similar background in terms of that I've been in the built environment, and I went on to work in the UK, and I finally found that no, energy is for me and I want to do something in energy to make a difference. But I can't find the right incubator or mentor program. So I think it would be nice to see how I can get access to these programs, or it would be an honor to be mentored by yourself.
Okay, Bernard, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thanks, Raisa, and thanks for the confidence. Yeah, look, I think we can take this offline, but what I will really encourage everyone to do, please familiarize yourself with this procurement process. I mean, personally, I would love to see a lot more participation from local participants going forward. And it's not as complicated as it seems. And I mean, if I get my way, one of the ideas that I have is to actually have some kind of education sessions where we can start teaching our people about how this process works and how they can participate. So thank you for that comment, Raisa, and then we can talk offline. My email you can get from Mahola.
Okay. The last question is from Tobeka Ncube. Tobeka, please go ahead. Tobeka, you are muted. Yeah.
Good evening to all the panelists. Thank you for this opportunity to ask the question. And I'm very happy to be joining this meeting today. I've learned a lot. I am a student at UKZN and I'm doing chemical engineering as a final year student. And this year I also came to grow to know more about renewable energies in one of my modules. Such that in one of our projects, I embarked on doing a research on biogas production, which is one of the parts of the renewable energies. So next year, it will be my graduation. I want to do masters, and I want to major in renewable energies and sustainability, especially for Southern Africa, because I can see that here in my country, we still need more people who are experts in this field, and I also want to be part of it. So I'm just basing my question to Bernard to please guide me in terms of going on with the journey to follow the field of renewable energy as I'm doing chemical engineering.
Okay, Bernard, would you like to comment on that? Areas of research going forward, and perhaps Esther as well, if you've got some views.
Yeah, there are a number of areas of research. There's quite a lot that we don't know. In fact, this is something that we have been doing even within ESCOM to try and understand, especially relating to grid stability issues. And the question that came from Ms. Mulato around, how do we make sure that going forward, it's not just an energy, but it's also help with supply-demand balancing. So yeah, we can again take it offline. I do have a number of topics off my head which we can channel this research area into. There's also some work that the IPP office has been doing with the likes of University of Cape Town, Stellenbosch, again in trying to increase the number of research in this area. So there's a lot we can talk offline. Get hold of Mahola's email, of my email via Mahola, and then we can continue the conversation.
Okay, thanks for that, Bernard. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. There's still quite a number of questions and comments, but we will take up all these questions and put up the responses as offered by the panelists, and we will then put them on our website. But I think we've also taken up the challenge in terms of really matching opportunities to people, and we'll see how we do a lot of that work. Nonkululeko, Kwasi, you still have your hand up. If you could just type out your question, and then we will attend to it in the summarized responses. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you and to hand over to Thabiso Madikgetle to just do the closing fast.
Thank you, Mahola, and all ladies and gentlemen. Our SAIEE president, Ms. Saigora, and also our panel of expertise specialists.
this was actually a very powerful and exciting session for us women. Our expert panelists have empowered us this evening with vast information on how we can reposition ourselves for the new reality in the energy sector. As we all know, as a country, we stand to gain a lot by equipping ourselves with the right education. So what we need is to upgrade what we have, because some of us, our educations, qualifications are outdated. So we need to step into finance, add a little bit of business management, innovation, and entrepreneurship, because you cannot just have your degree, that one degree, and hope to break through the new, I would say, the new energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, especially you women, I would say rise up, take the opportunities in the renewable energy space, look for mentoring opportunities, participate in special programs like the IPP procurement program, as Mr. Makoro has already mentioned. Look up for people that inspire you. Ask for mentoring, ask to share with these people, ask how they got there. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending our evening webinar. As Makola has initially mentioned in the beginning, that a recording of this webinar will be made available on the SAIEE YouTube channel, TV, and also on the SAIEE website. So for those who didn't, who only maybe managed to catch up later on, so you are able to get a full recording of this event. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, Ms. Makola.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.